Hello, everybody. I'm going to try a little experiment today, which is live coding in React. And what I'm about to do with ya is make this. So, not your typical React project at all. In fact, it's not even interactive in any way yet. It's really not an app. There's no reason for this to be in React, except I think it'll be fun and interesting and teach you a little bit about how React works. Um, This video doesn't really presuppose any knowledge, although I'm not going to go into the details too much. Um, I'm going at this with the philosophy that sometimes it's better to just jump in. If you do have a little bit of React knowledge / experience, this could be an opportunity to practice a little bit. And eventually, I'm going to build an interface into this that allows you to actually create these birds with maybe some sliders and button type input, as well as have a gallery and who knows, maybe even add a Firebase backend to store them. Um, but for today, I just want to show how to draw a background for this website, and then we'll put the content over the top of it. So, without any further ado, I'm just going to get started. And I'm going to live code this entirely in real time, just in the interest of expediency. At some point, I'll put together a proper series of tutorials for y'all creative coders out there. But for now, it's just gonna be, consider it project practice / hey, what is this React thing? Let me find out. And I hope you'll find it enjoyable. So to get started, I open up a new window in VS Code, Command-Shift-N, and I'm just gonna open a folder that's on my desktop that's empty, and it's called Build-A-Bird. There's nothing in it, you can see. What I'm going to do is, you have to have Node installed for this, right? So go ahead and type node-v and make sure you've got Node installed. And you can do the same with npm. Just make sure you've got Node, maybe add her around what I've got here. Higher should probably work too. Lower should probably work too. Who cares? Let's just type npx create React app. And I'm going to call this build bird live. And so this is going to build my React app, and then we're done. That's it. Just kidding. It's going to give us a template to work off of. And you can see it's put that folder in there for me. It's bringing in all the dependencies into node modules and doing a lot of stuff in package.json. Actually, not yet, but it's going to be doing a lot of stuff in package.json for me. And there it goes. So it's bringing in these start scripts and all kinds of stuff. And at some point, I'd love to make a video on personalizing your create React app script to bring in whatever dependencies you cherish the most. Like, for instance, Regal is one that I love, and maybe you love it too. And you can see as it's done now, it has created a public folder and a source folder, and it's telling me, we suggest you begin by typing cd build bird live. So I'm going to do that. And if you're not familiar with this terminal environment, you can just follow along with my commands. We won't spend too much time in here, but I strongly suggest getting more familiar with it. This just isn't the video for it. And so it says yarn start. I'm actually going to use npm just because, I don't know, it's what I like to use. npm yarn is like a version of npm that has gained some favor, but npm works just as well. So I run that, and it's going to run this start script, React scripts start, and start up a localhost server for me, run my project, and you can see there it is. That's not my Build-A-Bird app at all. That's just the template. And I promised you I wasn't going to explain what React is all about too much, but I do want to say in this public folder here is where our index.html is, and this is what's being served right now. You can see it's just a div with the ID of root. Everything else is being generated in the source, which is all JavaScript. And if we look in here in app.js, we'll see this is the stuff that you're actually seeing on the screen. And that's being fed through this index.js, which is being rendered by React. And what React's doing is it's just updating the DOM for me. So if you've seen my series on declarative JavaScript, this is exactly what that is. React is handling all the DOM manipulation for me. And I'm just writing some, actually not me, but React, the people who put this together wrote some JavaScript, which is functional in nature. This JavaScript here, it's each one of these little tags here is actually a function. You wouldn't know it looking at it, but it's a thing called JSX, and it's sort of like HTML in JavaScript, but it is actually a function. And we'll look at that in a sec. First, what I want to do is blow all this up. So I'm going to just delete all this stuff because we can build it ourselves. And once I move all the 8 files in my source folder to the trash, you can see my website disappears. Failed to compile. There's no index.js. So we need that. That's the entry point into our app. And I'm going to build that now. In source, I'm going to select my source folder, click this button, and type index.js. Now, as we get started with running React, and you can see there's nothing in here. Oh, there's nothing on my page, but it's no longer failing because I have my entry point. And I could do stuff like this. I could say alert, hi there. And I get the alert. So it's all functioning JavaScript, just like if you attached a JavaScript file to your index.html file, right? If you have a source called index.js. And we can even do normal DOM manipulation type stuff in here. You know, we could do document. We could say, remember there's a thing here in the root called, there's a div in here called root. I can say const my div, oh, made a mistake. I could say const my div equals document.get elements by ID root. And I could say my div dot inner text equals hi there. And I could say, I think if I just refresh this page now, we get that text. So here I'm handling the DOM manipulation myself, right? I'm getting this element by ID and I'm inserting some text. And you know, at this very simple level, React can't do much for me. But as I build this app, it could be that I'll put an interface in here that'll be kind of complicated and there'll be a lot to keep track of. And rather than having to keep track of that myself, React's going to help me keep track of that stuff. It also helps me organize my code in a way that is less prone to failure. So there's a lot to be said in favor of React. I like it a lot, even when I'm not building something truly reactive like now. Although it is a bit overkill for building this background. But I'm going to get rid of that. And before I launch into React stuff, I want to just show you my extensions. Bracket pair colorizer, very useful. I like it a lot. And then this other thing that's very helpful right now for you, perhaps, is simple React snippets, dead simple React snippets. And I'm going to be using that as well as if I open up VS Code settings and I go into, where Actually, I need to go, no. I need to, oops. Preferences, open settings, JSON. There's a little thing you can enable right here. Emmet.include languages, JavaScript, React. So maybe just pause the video and see if you can insert that into your own settings.json. And so you get there by going Command-Shift-P and then typing preferences, open settings, JSON. Not a deal killer one way or the other. If I were doing this as a tutorial, I would probably slow down quite a bit and make sure you did enable that, because it'll just make your life easier in the long run. But I don't want to spend too much time on that right now. I want to just jump into this thing. So I'm going to close this file, and we've got this index.js, and this is the entry point into our app. What I'm going to do is first import React from React. And we're going to be having a lot of these import statements, right? We're importing React from the node modules folder. We downloaded it when we created React app. And I'm also going to import React DOM from, you guessed it, React DOM. So on most of our files, we're going to import React. We're only going to import React DOM on this first file, the index.js. And this file is going to be the, in a way, it's like the little bottleneck through which all of our code, all the rest of our code in this source folder is going to be squeezed. And in here, we're going to have an invocation of a function. And this is basically our whole React website, right? It's just this React DOM.render method. This render method is going to update the DOM for us. So what we need to do is we need to pass our app into it. And I'm going to write that as a simple JSX tag. We'll pass that function. It doesn't look like a function, I know, but it is. And I'm going to say document.getElementById root. And so I'm going to pass the function that I want to pass in, which is going to ultimately contain the rest of our whole website is going to be going through this function. So again, if you looked at my series of videos on higher order functions and whatnot, it's super relevant to React, because that's all React is one big higher order function. And so we'll pass that function, and we'll pass the div, right? This is going to be a reference to that div that's on my index.html, which is the target for that function. So everything that happens in this function is going to get embedded in my website here inside this div. And it's giving me a little warning there. It's saying, hey, there is no app, right? And if I save this, it gives me that message. It says app is not defined. So I'm going to go ahead and define it here in source. I'm going to say app.js, and I'll say, and now this is where the React snippets come in. I'm going to start using those just because I like to. And I'm just going to type IMR. This is from the simple React snippets. It will fill in the rest of that for me. And another great thing it'll do is if I say SFC, it'll give me the template for this function that I want to build, which I'm going to call app. Now, there's still a problem here, which is I'm not returning anything from this function. So I'll just do that, and I'll type div and hit enter. And Emmet that we were enabling is going to finish the rest of that div for me. And now I'll go back and put that hi there in there that we had before. Now, app is still not defined because I'm not importing it in index.js. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to import app from app. And now it should succeed. Compiled successfully. It's being served on localhost 3000, and there it is. Hi there, just like before. So a lot of times with kind of a simple template or app, you'll feel like React is a little bit of overkill. That's quite a bit more JavaScript that I've written actually there for this so-called declarative approach, right? But as we go along, I think it'll come more and more clear why this is useful and how it's useful. So I'm going to take a look at my image again. That website or that background that we want to build using React, right? And so as you think about building a website with React, always look at the parts that are there and try and break it down into modular, reusable little functions if possible. And you can see immediately that this is easy to break down. There's going to be a head. There's going to be 2 eyes. There's going to be a beak. And, maybe there'll be another element, which is going to be just the container that holds all of these birds, right? And maybe I'll start with that BG element, and I'm gonna bring that into app. So index.js. We won't need to touch this again unless we decide to bring in Redux or maybe Firebase. We might put some stuff in here. We could also put that stuff in app. Probably if we use Redux, we'll bring it in here, but I can't see this being a Redux app, honestly. We'll see. We'll see how it goes over. Certainly not today. And so what I'm going to do in here is just create a new element, BG, and I'm going to make that a component. So components are what we call little modular function bits. And again, this is a function, right? You can see it. It's a function. It's clearly a function with a return value. It doesn't have any inputs, but these functions can also have inputs. And maybe we'll see that with BG. We'll see. I'm not sure where to put the data yet. So BG is going to be a component. I'm going to put it in the components folder. And oftentimes, there's so many different ways to structure React code. I'm just going to do this in a way that I like, which is to keep index and app at the root level of your source folder and then make a components folder where you put reusable stuff. And sometimes you may also have a pages folder, but we're just going to have the one page for today. I'm also going to be writing my CSS in JavaScript. So one thing I like about that is we can just have less files to keep track of. And so I'm going to make this thing called BG. And again, I'm going to IMR import React from React. And I'll type SFC to get this BG. And again, we need to always return something. So I'm going to return a div. And it's just going to be an empty div for now. Or maybe I'll just type in here, hi, this is the BG component. And now here in app, we've got BG that we need to bring in. So I'm going to import BG from and so, when you're working in this node environment, you go to the root folder where you currently are by typing /. If we don't type anything in there, then we're in the node folder. And you can see, so now I'm in the node folder, and there's all kinds of stuff I can import from the node folder if I want to, or node module, sorry. But if I type backslash, it's going to suggest the things that are in this folder to me. And I'm going to choose components, and then I'm going to choose BG. So now I'm bringing BG in, and we can see in our app, if I refresh, now we're in the BG component. So we're just, you'll see this a lot in React. You're again passing functions into functions into functions, and the whole thing is sort of just one big, as I said, higher order component. And it's kind of nifty. It keeps your code kind of modular. We could also write this in a single page if we wanted to. And sometimes I do that. We could just copy and paste this over. But for this one, I'm gonna put these in separate component pages. And let's go ahead and make the other files. So what did we say? We figured we'd want to have a head and a beak and an eye, right? And we can, I think, pretty much assume we're going to want these in the BG page. But we might also want these on another page, right? Is one reason why we want to make these and put them in this components folder. So I'm going to import head from head, and I'm going to import eye from eye, and I'm going to import beak from beak. And we don't need to say beak.js. That's just assumed Babel, which is a transpiler that's handling a lot of this code transpiling, converting it into a format that every browser is likely to be able to read. We'll take care of those details for us. So now we've got most of the components I think we're going to need. We've got app, we've got BG, and actually I have to think about how to do this. So I think what I might do is, actually, you know what? I'm going to change this. I'm going to add another component called bird.js. And my bird is going to hold all of those other elements. Okay, so we'll put these in bird. And again, I'll have to IMR, SFC, bird. And I'm going to bring in each one of these elements. And in here, I'm gonna hold off doing anything for now with whether to bring those in or not. But we've got a bird, and I need to make also stateless functional components for all of these. So why don't I go ahead and do that? And so this is going to be the beak, and this is going to be the eye. You can see it's automatically filling in both the name of the function and the export of the name in this export. And what I'm doing is I'm making a function and then making sure to export it so that it can be imported. And we'll go bird, beak, eye, head. And again, IMR. I'll call this one head. Now, there's a bunch of these stateless functional components that aren't actually returning anything right now, which is going to cause my code to fail. So what I'm going to do for now is just grab the head, and maybe I'll actually start in BG here. And I think for the BG, we maybe don't need a div. What we need to return from here is actually an SVG. Now, if you're not familiar with SVG, I sure think you should be. If you're interested in React or creative coding, either or, you really, I think, owe it yourself to learn SVG, which is why I'm going to use it here, even though I think maybe there's some people out there who don't know anything about it. But this is a great opportunity to learn both at once. And so SVG is a file format that allows you to make vector-based graphics, which means they scale super well. It's very responsive. They look super crisp on all screens, and React can handle them really well. They're natively handled in JSX, which makes them, in my mind, a great fit for doing what we want to do. And so what I'm going to do is, I think, just specify this viewBox parameter, right? And so this viewBox parameter, I can use just a normal string for it. And, you know, say like 1,800. I think I'll come back in a second and make make it like a canvas width and a canvas height. So if you've used P5, this here is a little bit like that. This is a little bit like our canvas. It's got a view box, and the view box is a concept that can be a little hard to wrap your head around. It's not exactly the width and height of this element. It's more like what the size of the SVG code is that I'm trying to render into the width and height of my SVG element. So SVG will have also a width and a height. And this is actually the width and the height. And so as long as I set those equal to the size of my view box, then the view box is going to be the same size as my SVG element, and everything is going to scale exactly right. But I could also set the size of this SVG box to say 1/10 of the size of my SVG element, and then everything is going to look bigger, if that makes sense. And I should make another video where I talk all about that, but for now, just trust me on that. And I think what I'll do is also style this view box, or this SVG element. And I mentioned I was going to write my styles, my CSS styles, in JavaScript. So one of the things I like about React is it lets me write everything in JavaScript. I don't have to worry about CSS files or HTML files if I don't want to. But I can also write regular old CSS. I'm just going to write it in JavaScript for now because I think it's going to help me at least keep track of everything a little bit better. So I'm going to say const bg style equals an object. And so I'm going to feed that object into this style property. And it's going to function just like regular CSS, but CSS in JavaScript, which means that we use camel case instead of the dashes, right, of normal CSS. And let's just see what that looks like. And maybe I'll just leave that background color and leave it at that for now. So now what we should have is an SVG element. And there we go. So you can see there's my color And you can see my SVG box, and that's kind of like my canvas right now. I think maybe the first thing I'll do though is change this value. So you can see we're repeating these things here. I'm gonna change this to canvas width. And I'm going to change this to canvas height. And I'm going to define both of those constants. For now, I'll just define them in here. Maybe later I'll put them into their own file. Canvas width equals 1,000. No, I'm going to say window.inner width. So now it's going to go all the way across, and I'll say const canvas height equals window.inner height. Let's just double check and see what happened in here. So yeah, we're kind of going now all the way across. You can barely tell there's a canvas there, but if I change the color to something more dramatic, like that, now you can see my SVG is filling up my canvas. Now this scale here is gonna mess with my elements, the size of my elements, if I don't change it to match these. So, but before I do that, I want to just mention, you saw how I converted that string, right, which is acceptable as a prop, into my JSX elements. I can pass that string, right? So before I had a string 1,000, I can use JavaScript instead, but I can't just say, whoops, I can't just say canvas width. I can't just use that constant canvas width. I need to put it inside curly braces, and that's how we integrate JavaScript into JSX. We put it in curly braces. Now, the JSX part of this is just in the return statement. Up here is JavaScript, and so I can say canvas width up here, and I can try to reassign that variable. It'll of course complain because I'm trying to reassign a constant. It's actually letting me do it. Oh yeah, no, look, see? Canvas width is constant, no constant assigned, so I'm gonna not do that. But that's just to say we can use JavaScript in the function body, we just can't use it in as a return value. And so we're returning from this function, we're returning everything between these two parentheses. Inside that return statement, we need to use these curly braces to denote everything that's JavaScripty. And so I'm going to use those here as well. But I'm going to keep these zeros. So what I'm going to do is make something JavaScripty. And you can see it's still fine. You can use strings in JavaScript, right? But what I want to do is put canvas width right here. And now it's going to complain, or it's not going to get that value, because this is not, actually, I take that back. It's not going to complain, because that's also a valid string, I think. But it's not going to actually get this value unless I put this value in brackets and precede it with a $sign and change these two quotation marks to backticks. And now that is something called a template literal. which is an absolutely essential part of working with React, um, is learning about this thing called a template literal, which, if you don't already know, is just a way to mix JavaScript into a string. And that whole thing is, it's not a string. And if I take away these backticks, you can see it says, no, doesn't work. It's JavaScript, so it needs to go inside of those curly braces. So there's a lot of weird sort of looking code in React, as you can see. A lot of these curly brackets and arrow functions, right? But once you get some time with it, it'll all start to make sense. So inside this BG here, what I'm going to do is make a bird. And I'm going to import bird from bird. So let's see. Now that's failing because I'm not returning anything from bird. So I need to do that. I'm going to go to bird, and I'm going to return a head, which I'm importing here. And now head is failing because I'm not returning anything from head. So here in head, I'm going to actually return something. And I think what I want to return is, I think what I'll do is inside bird head. I think this will work to just do a circle. And so a circle is one of the SVG primitives. And if you've used P5, it's a lot like ellipse. And what it wants for its arguments is a center X and a center Y and an R and a fill. And this fill, let's just start off with white, or maybe I'll use that. And CX, we're going to say, let's just say 100, 100, 50. So now we've got a successful build, and let's see if we've got a circle. We do. We've got a circle. Yay. That's not really what we want, but we're getting closer to what we want. Let's see. What do we want to do next? So inside of bird, I'll maybe make this a little bit bigger to start with, and a little more colorful. So let's make this, let's go over 300, 300, 150. Let's just make this blue. So now we've got a blue circle on a pink background. And we can do all of the P5y things kind of in this way with SVG, but with actually a lot more control in some ways. And we can make these, I can make this circle interactive. I can give it click methods. I can make it move. I can do anything I want to with it. So that's my head. I think what I'm going to do is in my bird, I'm going to add I and an I and we'll hold off on the beak for now. All right, so now I'm getting an issue. And React is telling me you must wrap adjacent JSX elements in an enclosing tag. And what this means is you can't have multiple elements at the same level of your JSX. So I can't, for instance, if I was making divs, right? I can make a div like this. Hi. And we'll see the text. Oh, I is not working, so I'm going to comment that out for now. Oh, where is my text? Oh, I think it's below this. If I go out to app, if I go to BG and put a div up here, again, I get that same problem, right? You can't have adjacent JSX elements. So now, adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. Did you want a JSX fragment? Well, yes, I do. So what I can do is I can do a couple of things here. One thing I could do is just put another div here and wrap these elements in my div. And now that works, and we'll see it says hi above the canvas, right? Another thing I can do is I could say react.fragment and put this stuff in that fragment. And that works. And so that fragment is a little bit like a div, but it doesn't ever go out to the DOM. So in some ways it's preferable. Okay, so we're here, but this isn't what we wanted to do at all. We can get rid of this. What we want to do instead is use something called a group. And a group is specific to SVG. If I put these elements in here, oops. This should now, the eyes won't pass. Let's fix that. Let's make this eye export. And we're getting that same error. I just wanted to show you with the divs how maybe you'll be wanting to build something with divs and not with SVG. But here in SVG, we can just do the same thing as the react.fragment, wrap these elements in a group. And that'll work as soon as I get this I to return something. And again, what we're going to return is, let's return another G. And it's going to have a circle and a circle and yet again a circle. And I'll just show you why. If we take a look at, so now we're working. My eye, the circle doesn't have any fill color or any size or any center, so it's not going to show up. But what we want to do is we want to give this circle that I made already, that blue circle, let's give it these two eyes. And so they've got, you can see 3 circles. 3 concentric circles, one color, and one white. So the outermost circle is going to be biggest. This outermost circle is going to have a center and a radius and a fill color. And each one of these circles is going to have a center and a radius and a fill color. And boy, wouldn't it be nice if there were a way to populate all of these with JavaScript? I'm going to do it. Let's see. And I'm just going to do one. And then copy them all. So, and the reason I say that is what I can do is scale. I can basically write one set of values here, I think. And aside from the colors, we're going to want 3 separate colors, I think, right? But we'll come to that. So what we can do is just say, let's just give it like an X and a Y and a radius. And here what I can say is this will be size. This will be size over 1.5 maybe. And then the last one, or maybe this will be like, yeah, 1.5, and this will be size over 5. So it'll be a lot smaller. And that'll be this kind of pupil, which I suppose I could make black. And so why don't I do that for now? Actually, we'll call that pupil color, iris color, and eye white color. Right, and so we can say const x equals something, something. We'll call this like 50, 70. And we'll call this, actually, before I go any farther, I feel like I'm wasting your time. Because really what I want to do with these values, ultimately, I know already what I want to do with these values. I want to bring them into this function so that this function is more reusable. I want to bring these in as arguments. So let's just do that. There's no point going through the tedium of writing all these out locally and then rewriting them later. So let's talk about that. These values here, this X, this Y, this size, eye white color, iris color, pupil color. These are values that I can bring into this function. And I'm going to bring them in as an object. And so I think what I'll do is call this iData. And I will destructure this iData off of this object. I'll say const x, y, size, eye white color, iris color, pupil color. And I'll set that equal to iData. So if you're not familiar with object destructuring, you're seeing it in action. I'm going to bring in an object called iData. That iData object is going to have these properties. And using this syntax, I can pull those properties off of this object. And, you know, again, if I was being more methodical about this and not just coding live, I would probably give you a good rundown on object destructuring. But I'm just going to let you go look it up, and pause the video, and learn a little bit about it if you don't know about it. It's super integral to working with React. And anytime you look at React code, real React code, you're bound to see this a lot. So it's a very important thing to learn if you want to learn React. So in my bird, what I need to do is pass in something called a prop. And so what I'll do is pass in, as iData, I'll pass in something called rightEye. And here, I'll do the same, but this time, left eye. So now I've got something that totally doesn't work, but is starting to be very, very reusable, which is a core concept with React. And so I'm going to have iData, and I'm going to pass in I'm going to pass in my left eye data that I'm about to write, pass that into this eye, and I'm going to pass my right eye data into this eye. And so what the values that I need to create out here, two slightly different versions of it. So I'll say, we'll just keep this up here, right? I'm going to say this is going to be const left eye data. And it's going to be an object. And it's going to have all this stuff in it. And X is going to be one thing. Y is going to be something. Size is going to be something. White color is going to be iris color is going to be something. Pupil color is going to be, I think we decided we would go with black. Okay, so now we're almost working, but we're not quite working. I'm going to make another one of these. This will be right eye data. And what I need to make this work is I need to figure out what these values want to be. What X, Y, size, and iris color. So I think for now with iris color, I'm just going to specify a color for both of these, actually. We're going to make them be the same color, and it's just going to be 00FF00. So it's going to be solid green. And we can come back and change this. As you have seen, ultimately, we're going to need to randomize that. But we can do that in a bit. Right now, what I want to do is just get these eyes working and placed on the canvas. And then we'll come back and make this, see if we can make some more of these. And I hope you're already seeing ahead to the future when what we're going to do to make all these birds is just make basically one bird and then reproduce it over and over again. And I'll show you how we use some functional programming concepts to do that. All right, so let's get this X and this Y and this size. For the size for now, I'm just going to say 100. No, I think we decided 70. And then this X and Y I'm going to get from the head. So the center of this is 300. Let's just call that 250 maybe. Where are we? We're in the bird. Let's actually make a constant called center X. So this is going to be the bird center. And it's going to be, what was that, 300? And const center Y equals 300. And the head now, you know what, let's do this even better. Let's say const center is going to be an object with an X and a Y. So one thing that you're seeing already in action, and I'm really just trying to get you to leap into this, is in this declarative functional style, we want these small functions, as I talked about in that series of videos, these small functions that do sort of one thing each. Now, bird is really just doing one thing. It's compiling all of these. But the head is the head, and the eye is the eye, and the beak, which we haven't written yet, is going to be the beak. And so we've got these functions that do their one thing, and into those functions we pass data, which is most often structured as a JavaScript object. Can also be an array or just a variable or, of any type, but a lot of times in React you'll see these collections of objects, and that might be a shopping cart, which has a user, and it has items, and it has prices, and all kinds of other data, perhaps, like tracking the user and all that nifty stuff. So this is going to be center dot x minus, we'll say 90. So center dot x minus 90. So it's going to be x minus 90 over here. And the right eye is going to be center dot x plus 90. And let's make another one here. And we can just say const I space equals, what would we say, 90? And for the y, we're just going to say center dot y. Let's say plus. I'll just hard code that for now. And this one too. So they're both going to be a little bit above the center. Let's see. Okay, left eye is not defined. Right eye is not defined. And you know what? I like data better than this. So we'll say data. All right, and now it's working. Let's see what it looks like. Whoopsie daisy, what happened? Uh-oh, I don't see anything. All right, so I goofed. Let me look in my console. This is great. I love it when I goof. All right, so we got this big circle. Oh, I know what it is. Let's see here. So the head, I think the eyes should be on top of that. Left eye data, right eye data, compiled successfully. Let me try again. Let's just take a look at our elements. So we'll go to elements. Inside here, we've got an SVG element. Inside there's our div with ID of root. Inside of there is a G that's got a circle. That's that one. And here's a circle, and a circle, and a circle. So I clearly goofed, and I think you can see what my goof is. None of my properties, none of my circle definition has made it in here or in here. So let's take a look and see where I goofed. Somewhere in the syntax for this. So iData comes in, this data comes in as iData into I. And I'm going to just console.log. Oh, did I give it a size? Not sure if I gave it a size. Let's just check that. So size, no, it's got a size. So somewhere else I goofed that I'm not seeing. Console.log. looks. And we'll take a look here, look in the console. Huh. So we've got an X. It's 210. Let me just console.log idata. And we'll take a look. So idata looks good. There's my X, Y, size, white color, iris color. It's all there. And then I destructure that off. Oh, they just showed up. I'm not sure what I did to change that. But there they are. There's my two eyes, and they're maybe a little bit big. Maybe they're a little low. Let me go back to bird and just say plus. And I really like to have not have very many hard-coded numbers. And so what's that going to be like? 70. And we'll say const size equals 70. I kind of like them big like that. And we'll use that value here. Let's make that eye size. And I think you can already probably imagine that we're going to take these constants and bring them out to a higher level at some point. We'll structure those into their own object. So there's left eye data, right eye data, and now we've got eye size. Let's just take a look and see how that looks. Oh, whoops. I see what's happened. They're going down, not up. So I need to go minus because the x-axis goes in this direction and the y-axis goes from 0 to big numbers there. So let's say this should be minus. And it should be probably closer to 20. Whoa. I just do size. Oh, whoops. Okay. Yeah, I liked it big like that. There we go. So now we got this big-eyed thing. And the last thing we need to bring in is the beak. So maybe I'll just do that. Let's just write that beak real quick, and then I'm going to take a little break and get a little more coffee. And for the beak, we're going to need to do... Actually, you know what? Let's hold off on the beak for now. So we've got eyes. We've got a bird. We need to add the beak, and we need to add some ability to make a whole bunch of these things. So what I want you to do is, if you've made it this far, what I want you to do is think about how we could, just like we've made several eyes here, how we could make more birds. And I think you can imagine, right? It's going to look sort of like this, where we bring in something, destructure some values off of something. And I want you to see if you can find where that's going to come in, and even try doing it on your own. And then I'll come back and first we'll make the beak, and then we'll make a bunch of these birds. Okay. See you in a bit.